good?
I think we're live.
I think so. I think so. Okay, so if people when people show up, it'll display right there, and people comments will be there.
Okay.
If they're making comments, and if they're happy with it, they'll show little hearts and smiles and whatnot on there. Okay.
All right, so as people start showing up, huh?
Yes. Yes. All right, so we're in the microphone. Let's get
That's
started. Hi, guys. Welcome. Jenny K. Quilts. Thank you for joining me on Ask Jenny K. Today we're going to talk about borders, but I also have a special guest and a little trunk show and lots of stuff to share with you. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing, I'd like to introduce Mary. Mary, okay, long story short, or short story really long, one of the two. I was adopted, and in my 20s, I found Mary, who's my birth mom, and unbeknownst to each of us, we both started quilting kind of at around the same time, and and I didn't realize she was a quilter until she started posting pictures and showing pictures of her quilts and everything. Like, you do this too? I do this too. So that was really a lot of fun. Now Mary lives in Sheridan, Wyoming. Or Story.
Yeah,
okay.
Outside of Sheridan.
And she is going to tell us, she brought some T-shirts of the quilt shop that she likes.
Yes.
And she brought some info about it. So
right.
share it. Okay.
Okay. In the quilt sampler,
The 2016. Yep.
recently came out. They included a lot of different shops to visit all around the country. And one of them is a shop that's about 5 miles from my house. And it's Pinewood Cottage.
Pinewood Cottage?
Yes. And Janet, who owns the place, she does chickadee charms. And she designs and makes patterns. A lot of her theme is Western wildlife, cowboys and
all those things.
and wildlife and animals and things like that. Also, this wonderful array of batiks, which is where I go.
Ooh,
I
yeah, you
love
would.
batiks,
Yeah,
yes.
you would.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're up north Wyoming. Be sure to stop in and visit Pinewood Cottage. You can check them out online as well.
Yes, she does have a site online, and her quilt patterns are online as well, and it's Pinewood Cottage.
Yay!
All right.
Thank you.
Now I'm supposed to do a trunk show.
Yes, a little show and tell
this
here.
Is my show and tell. Okay.
This is really. You guys are gonna like this.
First one I want to talk about is is what we call the 4 generation
Yes.
Dresden plates. They're Depression era fabrics, and it was started by my great-grandmother, which would make Jen's great-great-grandmother. When she passed away, they went to my grandmother, and when my grandmother passed away, they went to my mother. And then when I started quilting, my mom had indeed the trunk that had these in there. And so I took them all to my mom's. There were 12 of them. I have 5. There's 5 kids. And what I did was took the plates and I put them together and made wall hangings. And so my mom got one, and then all 5 of us kids got a copy. And when my mother passed away in January,
That's awesome.
we passed this one. This was my mom's. We passed it on down to Jen.
Yeah, I think some of those are older than Depression era. I think so. I think so.
Flour sack kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think even older than that.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a great way to remember stuff and keep track of everything. I mean, how neat is that to be able to hold something that you know goes back, and this love of fabric that we have?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Amazing. Some of it was some of them are hand done by my great-grandmother, but then I machine. I don't do that. So.
Okay, so the next thing you have is another great way to remember stuff. These are so popular right now. Yeah. We can only show a corner because this is a big fella. All right, so what do we have here?
My husband worked with insurance and banking. He retired this last year. I took all of his ties. I had 80 ties.
Wow.
Took them all apart, and then I kind of used the idea of the Dresden plates and put them all together, and this is a full-size, king-size.
King-size, yeah.
King-size bedspread. And it's got all of his ties, and then I did the piano keys around the outside.
That's wonderful. Because you get these whole stacks of stuff, like T-shirt quilts, something like this, to use it and remember by, not just have those bags and say, I got to do something with this.
Yes.
Okay, so one more memory thing,
and
which is really wonderful.
So, we were doing a service for my mom, and Jen said, Jenny K, said, let's make a quilt. So she designed it.
Yeah.
And I built it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took it to the service, and family members all signed on the quilt, and then I'm going to finish it up and then pass it around to different family members and let them hang it up. We'll make a wall hang.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice
so.
way to have memorabilia to keep a hold of those
and
things.
And my mother loved flowers, so this is Orpheus Flower Garden.
Beautiful.
That's what we're going to call it.
Yay!
All right.
Yay! And I'll have the pattern available at some point.
Yeah.
All right, Mary. Well, thank you so much, and I'm sure people are just dying to know all about borders. So I'm going to teach you my technique that I have in borders, and I'm going to adjust the camera here. Woo! Hey, Mary, look at that beautiful blue quilt in the corner.
Wow! Can I get a pattern?
Yes, you can. You can if you subscribe to my email.
Okay.
Okay. It's free for email subscribers, so get it, make a chance. It's called How Many Circles, because how many circles do you have to make this quilt? All right, so I'm going to adjust this a little bit, adjust the camera here, so you can see down at the table, and we're going to talk about borders again, and I got to do the hunchy thing here. Let me lower my seat. Ooh, that's exciting. Okay, so first thing that we're going to talk about, we're going to pretend this is your quilt block. Right? We've got the block right here in front of you. And I never cut the borders to size. Well, first, let me state the problems that you can encounter. Wavy borders, you can encounter borders that have the kind of curved edges, or ruffly borders, and you don't want to avoid those. So we don't want ruffly borders. Oh, I see somebody just chimed in. Thank you, man. Thumbs up. Woohoo! So to avoid those, and what I started doing when I had to make shop samples for the shop I was working in, that, you get really nervous because it's going to hang on the wall and everybody's going to look at it. So you got to find a way that you can make the magic happen every time. So even though border instructions will say cut to this specific length, what I do is I just make sure I have plenty of it. So I cut the strips to the right amount, and I piece if I need to. But like, say if it, they want 60 inches, I make sure, okay, I put two of them together, I got 80 inches of that one and 80 inches in the other, or something like that. I don't cut it to size, because sometimes I change the pattern, or I do something differently than what they said, or they may have made a mistake and I have to go back and fix it. I use the whole length, and that's part of my trick. So that's the first trick. Cut all the length that you want there. Okay, so then you take your border strip, and you can see I've got a full length strip there. We're pretending this is a whole quilt top. I think you can roll with me. All right, so then I lay it out across the middle, and I'm going to smooth it across the middle here. I'm going to take my pins. And this is a very particular technique, but just follow along, okay? It's going to make sense at the end. I'll pick it up, and I'll put in a little pin that's kind of right by the edge, that's through all the layers. It's through both layers, both the top and the border. And then I'll put a little pin that is just exactly through the edge of the quilt top. Exactly. But it's only through the border. It's not through the quilt underneath. And that's my placement. So when I move it, I can get it just right. Then I'll go across the quilt, and I'll smooth out, because usually, and I'll piece like little segments. So if I have 7 blocks, I'll do a little piecing. I'll do a pin in each of the blocks so that you can clearly see, aha, this is where that one goes. Okay, got it. So when I move it up to the top, I can line it up exactly. And I started this technique because I used to have to put them out, big stuff, on the floor, living room floor. And I'm down there, I want to take care of as much as I possibly can. And I'm moving across. What I found is if you didn't pin, or if you didn't pin at several points along the way, what would happen as I was moving is you'd get this number, and I'd be down here on this side, and I have to go back over there and fix that side, and I'm not a fan. So this was an easier way. So I'm just going to show you. I put a couple pins in here at different points. You want to make sure they're nice and straight, and you want to use pins that are easy to push through. Don't use a pin that's so big and blunt that you're like trying to shove a table leg through there. Just use a nice pin that's nice and smooth that'll work for you. And then I go to the other side, and I put that same one that's kind of a placement, hold it in place, one that's close to the edge, and then I'll do one that's exactly on the edge through the border only. Got it? Okay. Then I will remove the pins and I work from left to right, just like reading. The more process you give yourself, the more routine, the better results you're going to get. So you don't have to learn it again each time. So I take it out of the top and just keep it in the border. I do that with each one, and I work my way across again from left to right. And then I move it up to the top of my quilt top. Then I line up on the exact edge, my friends. On the exact edge, I make sure the pin that I put in there for placement on that edge is perfectly aligned, and then I pin. And then you can move your way across. Now this, spacing it out like this and making sure you're lining things up will keep you from getting waviness and from getting ruffles, because you like shove everything down to one end kind of, you push it along. That's what gives you the ruffles there, and we want to avoid those. So pinning like this, kind of straight across, that is the technique I use. I'm going to put one more pin on here. And because I'm down on the floor doing this, oh yeah, I'm sorry, one other thing I want you to notice. I have my short end here. I have this longer end hanging off the end. That's the way I do it, so that when I sit at the machine and I just start sewing, I can sew right along there. And I can take out each pin as I go along. Beautiful. But since I'm already down here on the floor, I'm going to switch around and I'm going to put on the bottom border as well. And I do the same exact thing, and I move it up to the top and then sew. When you press, press out. Press towards the borders, and that'll keep them more controlled. Okay, so I have already done that for you. Da-da-da-da. And I want to show you, so I put a top and bottom on, and I want to show you how I trim. Because I used to kind of eyeball it, right? Oh, that's just 2 inches. I can cut that, right? And I would find myself ending up with little curvy numbers. Oh, and see, look at this. Look at this. See how it's kind of folded? It's crooked. It's not right. You would want to go back and press that again, because these are the kinds of issues that can cause you problems when you're pressing your borders. See, notice I've pressed towards the border. Beautiful little pressing there. So let me show you how I cut it. I take my ruler, okay, and I line it up, and it doesn't matter which line. I just pick a line that I can see well, and I make sure it's lined up on my border that I put on, and that it's lined up there. So it's going in this direction and that direction. It goes lined up. That will make sure that this is square. Don't use a big ruler to figure this part out, because you're going to try to line up the top while you're trying to line up this one in here. No, just a little square one will do the job for this. Cut that off. Nice, straight. This is what happens with the curvy things. We don't get that nice and straight and square. And then I come down here to the other side. The other advantage of doing it this way and doing the several pins across is if you have, if you have blocks that are like 6 1/2, 6 1/2, 6 1/2, 6 1/4, 6 1/2, you can kind of stretch out and you can adjust it and you can ease that in if you are working in just that space without having to get a whole bunch over here that's kind of roughly and bulky. You don't want to do that. So I would just continue to work my way around. I make sure I'm lined up on any line just so that I can see it, and lined up on this edge, and then I'm just going to cut off that border. And that's it. That's it, my friends. So if you have any questions, please chime in and let me know. I'd love to be able to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, you can get a free pattern. I'll turn over here. I'll do a little bit better. You get a free pattern by signing up for my newsletter. I'd love to send it to you. Next time we're going to talk about 1/4 inch seam allowances. Very serious, and there's a big debate over scant or regular 1/4 inch seam allowances. How do you get them? How can you make them be consistent? We're going to go over all of that, and we'll cover all of that to the best. I'll try to answer all your questions of it. That's what I mean to say. Thank you, Mary, so much for joining me.
Welcome.
All right, and I will see you guys next time.